Welcome back to another episode of the Become Limitless Podcast. Now, I do want to apologise. This episode is coming out late. We've had some technical issues, but we've got that sorted now, so let's get straight into this episode. Thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you for your support as always. Okay, so this episode I want to talk about having a bad day and how to deal with having a bad day. So what does it mean by having a bad day? How do we even have a bad day? So when I'm going to talk about all these things, I want you to really understand that a lot of it comes back down to awareness. So how do we even have a bad day? Does it start with a situation, circumstance, an argument with your partner, your child does something? Normally it's a situation, something like that turns into a bad day, turns into a bad week, turns into a bad month. Your life starts to suck. This is how it starts to tumble and snowball. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about how we can start to reframe some things, some antidotes to having a bad day. What we can change, what we can do to change that having a bad day, and how we can then try to change the narrative, try and change the way we see things. And if we can do that, then we can really push towards being more in control of what's happening. No more finger pointing and worrying about, well, this happened and such said this, and oh, my partner does that, or my kids do this. There's no more. That doesn't happen anymore. You are in complete control over what happens. Okay, what's the process of having a bad day? What is that process? As I said before, it normally starts with something, a situation, a circumstance. And what happens is, it's bad. It's normally bad. It's something that's inconvenient. It makes you feel rubbish. And you get flooded with all those chemicals that make you think, I'm just having a shocker. This is going to be a bad day. I can't do much else. I have this chemical compound of anger in me. It's flooding through my body. It feels pretty good as well as it feeling pretty bad. And what are we going to do? What am I going to do? I can't do anything about it. The world's against me. And all these thoughts start to flood into your brain, and they start to tell you all these different things. Now that's the feeling, thinking. Feeling, thinking, feeling, thinking. That's that loop that starts to happen. We've talked about that many, many times. So when that happens, that starts to activate the thing called the RAS. And if you haven't obviously heard of the RAS, go check out my earlier podcasts on the RAS. So that's a reticular activating system. And you'll see that the RAS filters in what you want to see. It filters in all this information and filters out a lot of information too. So this is where it's important to understand that this situation that happens, and then what we tell ourselves, and the think, feel loop that we go through, then starts to affect the RAS inside our brain, telling us what we see, what we filter in and filter out. And the more and more we think those bad thoughts, the angry thoughts, the sad emotions, whatever the case may be, how you're feeling, if it's not a good feeling and you're having a bad day, what that means is that you're going to start to filter in more of those things to reaffirm, to reinstate, to really cement and bring home the feeling of, you know what? I'm having a bad day. I'm actually having a bad day. And the more we do this, the more we can understand, we can see, then we start to see more things that reinforce the way we're feeling, that make us feel worse. Like you can see, you start to notice things like, oh, look, that's not going well. Great. Oh, look, over here, this isn't working. Great. And that's the role of the RAS. If we're feeling a certain way or we're thinking about a certain thing over and over and over, it'll start to filter those things in for us. So that's why one situation can turn into a bad day. Now, the unfortunate part is that you're filtering all this stuff in, like that's reinforcing the way you feel, the bad day as such. Also filters out the amazing things that are happening in your life. Also filters out all these opportunities that you could have to change your day, to make your day better. And it's unfortunate that that's the way it is, but we've got to really understand and create awareness around that that's the case. So you can have the most amazing opportunity, the most amazing thing happen, and you're not going to notice. That's the problem. You're not going to notice these good things. You're not going to notice all the amazing things that are happening in front of your kids, your spouse, your job, all these things that are happening. And the problem is that the longer this goes on, the more and more you can reinforce it, and it turns into something else completely. Instead of it being, I had a bad situation or circumstance happen and I had a bad day, now it turns into, I'm in a bad mood. And going from that in a bad mood, I then moves towards a character trait or who you are after a certain amount of time. The longer and longer it goes, the more and more it's reinforced in your brain, and the more and more it becomes who you are. So it's very important that we understand what a bad day is and then how we can change it. Because you'll notice that people that have a bad situation, a bad day, seem to have a lot of them. And that's only because they can see them more. That RAS is kicking it in more. Whereas a person that's more positive or works on what happens, processes what happens, and we'll talk about that very shortly, they can move on. They turn that RAS off on that. They want to know, okay, that happened, switch over, let's go to something else. And when they can do that, they can really start to focus on what they need to and what they want to do. Instead of the negative all the time, they're focusing on some positive aspects. Now people say, you can't be positive all the time. Well, why not? Why don't you want to be positive all the time? Why don't some negative things happen? We can turn that off. Yes, those negative things can happen. Deal with it. Move on. Don't sit there and dwell on the negative things. Use the positive. That's where the magic happens, is in the positive. Especially for your body and your brain. And that obviously opens up a lot of opportunities out there as well. Now let's go back to what I was talking about just before in the regard processing this emotion. Now we talked about this in the emotional understanding episode where we talked about how our IQ, that's how smart we are, and our emotional quotient, EQ, which is how smart we are with our emotions, and being able to process those emotions. So we take a situation, we process it, we then react to it, however we want to do that, and however long that takes, and then we move on, or we don't move on. But the process normally looks like that you're going to take this situation, the stimulus that's going to occur outside of you, life, you're then going to react to it. It's either going to be good or bad, depending on your level of awareness, your level of control, how much you really gauge what's going on, which we're trying to work on here. That's why we have a bad day. And then from there, we get that reaction out of the way, and it starts to create a certain feeling, thought, and if we normally move on, or we don't move on. And if we move on, it's very important that we've actually processed it properly. And if we're not going to move on, well, we need to work. Why is that the case? Why am I not moving on? How come I'm not moving on at all? Now, a step further to that is when you start to get really good at that, the stimulus comes, life gets you, you process it, and then you move on, or you learn and move on. The next step is, okay, I've done that. Can I do the reaction internally? Can I receive the stimulus, the life, whatever's happened? I then internally process it real quickly while I react to it. Reacting. Nice big breath. And then move on.
Now, this is the beauty and brilliance of staying calm in certain circumstances and situations. That's what I feel happens for me. So whenever I go into stressful situations, some of the situations that my job entails that I do, that means that I need to be able to take a stimulus, something that happens, stay calm, take that big breath, allow the reaction and craziness that goes on in my head, like, whoa, what's going on? This is craziness. How can we even deal with this? All those crazy thoughts, all that crazy stuff that goes on. And then, all right, move forward, take action. And that's the essence of being calm and in a crazy situation, a stressful situation, a rubbish situation. And if we don't do it normally, if I don't do it, then nothing gets done. We get a bit frantic. Nothing is getting occurred. No one's thinking logically in that situation. We're all just very emotional and allowing that thought, feel process to keep occurring and going bang, 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 and nothing's happening. No logical things is happening. The Einstein brain isn't working. Okay, so for me, it's magic to be able to do that. So now that all this, we've talked about this, now you've got a good understanding of what actually happens when you have a bad day and why. It's really important that we start to understand that. As always, my little first talk I want to talk about is the creating a habit of stopping. When you can create a habit of stopping, understanding that if I don't react straight away, that's probably an important part, and that's the start of the awareness that we can get over what's going on here. What's this situation doing to me? Creating that awareness, that stop. There's a sudden, slight pause. If you see anyone that's in a stressful situation or something happening, and it feels like they should be getting overwhelmed right now, what they're doing is they've stopped mentally. They taken a breath, and now they're going to think about what's going on. They don't allow themselves to react like, oh, this is getting too much, and then the bundle falls, they fall apart, the brain goes into chaos, the thought feeling loop has just got to take over and run riot. They stop, they reassess what's going on, and then they move on. They process what they want to process, they learn from whatever's going on. Why am I so stressed out? What's going on here? What is occurring? And we'll talk about some more things we can talk to try and ask ourselves as well to really cement this in. So let's quickly go over the process of having a bad day. So something happens, you start to let it fester, you start to let it linger, you don't process it, you're reacting poorly, you're reacting the way that you would normally react, you're not really consciously controlling what's going on in here or in here. That turns into something you do for 2 to 3 hours. You're still feeling it, you're still reliving that situation, you're over and over, you're visualizing it in your head, and then it turns into a whole day, having a bad day, or a week, or a month, or a year, or maybe it's just who you become. And that depending on how nasty or horrible the situation was, depends on how long you can let that happen, or let it happen to you, and how much it shapes who you are. So once we understand this process, we can then start taking some antidotes. And the first one, as I said before, was stopping. Creating some awareness. Creating a space for you to consciously make a decision to take action or not take action, or react or not react. Another thing I like to do is, if I'm having a shocker, exercise. If I feel like the day's just run out, I feel like the day's just getting too much for me, I'll go for a run, I'll go out and do some push-ups, I'll go out and do some sit-ups, I'll go out and do some chin-ups. And that really, really helps me change the chemistry in my body as well. Because most of the time, when you think about it, it's the chemistry that's going well bad too. So you're feeling still, and it's hard to get control over that, because once you've had thought, and you're not quick enough to catch that thought going into the brain, the thought happening and creating all the chemicals to flood the body, to allow you to feel the way you are going to you're thinking. And then you've got to try and fight the feeling, which is there. It's a physical feeling. It's a chemical compound that's actually happening. So It's very hard to fight something like that because you're like, well, I feel like rubbish. And I feel sad. I feel like crap. You got to slow down and take a breath, and that's where it's really important that we get that first habit, that first antidote in of just stopping. If something happens, just stop, take that big breath. Okay, how do I want this to go? How do I want to react? How do I want to do X, Y, Z? Now, once we've done the exercise, we can really focus in on that stopping and breathing, and then once we've done that, then we can look at the power of what's happening now. Like, what have I got coming at me? What's coming at me from every angle? What am I looking at here? Really gauge what actually is occurring and understand, is this affecting me? So let's take an example of someone cutting you off in a car, or cutting me off in a car. I don't understand the process of, a lot of people get angry when you get cut off. Did someone hit you? Did they hit the car? Did they hit you? Did they hurt you? Did they do anything like that? Apart from you having to brake a little bit harder to let them in because they've cut you off. Why do we react so poorly in that regard? I know for myself, it was just a learned thing that I've seen a lot of angry drivers when it comes to that, and they're reacting poorly. And some people won't let go. Some people will just stew on that for ages. They'll have like 2-3 hours where they'll just react poorly to someone cutting them off. And that used to be me. I used to just like, why did they cut me off? There's a multitude of reasons why they could have cut you off. They could have been in a rush to get to the hospital. They could have been in a rush to do whatever it is. Their kid might be sick. They're going to try to get to the hospital. They hurt themselves at school. Whatever the case may be, they're trying to get there to get see that. It could be an emergency situation for themselves to try to get there quickly, and they cut you off. So it's very important that we reframe and understand that, hang on a second, I don't need to, because that didn't really affect me. Does it really affect me? That person cut me off. Break. Oh, that was close. Whew. Stop. Doesn't worry me. Look, right now, the car's fine. I'm fine. I'm not any worse off going to work or wherever I'm going to go. I'm not going to be late. It's one car between me and where I was. It doesn't matter. And when that occurs, when you can start to stop, so what's happening now? What is so bad? Why am I reacting this way? Is it really affecting me? Whatever the case may be. That's where the power is. And that's living in the now, living in the present. It's not or living in the past or living in the future. It's, this could happen, or this did happen to me. No. What's happening right now? And if you can do that, and do that often, ask yourself, what's happening right now? What's happening right now? What's happening right now? Is it affecting me? Is it doing this? Am I actually hurt from it? And then base and create conscious reaction to that feeling or whatever's actually exactly happening right now. Not what you're imagining, not what you're worrying about in the future, not what happened in the past. What's happening right now? Right now, what is happening? And that's all you should be doing. That's how you should be reacting, is what's happening right now. Get a little bit of perspective. Is it that bad? And it comes back to stopping and having that feeling of what's happening right now. Is it affecting me? How big of craziness? Am I going to let this situation dictate who I am for the rest of my life? Because that's how some things happen. And it doesn't matter how bad they are. It doesn't matter how bad the situation is, how bad the circumstance is. Am I going to let this dictate who I'm going to be for the rest of my life? Is it? In perspective. Like, I've got this amazing family, I've got this amazing job, I've got this amazing and I'm going to let this little circumstance or situation occur and then dictate how I feel and how rubbish I'm going to feel and how much I can't understand, appreciate, be grateful for my life that I've got. Are you going to let that occur? And that's what can occur with people. They get stuck and they can't see all the amazing things that are happening, and they try to, and then it's like, no, but this happened to me, so I've got to feel like rubbish, and this happened and I've got to feel like rubbish, and I shouldn't be feeling good because this happened to me. The more and more you reaffirm, reinsure, reinstate, reaffirm all those things, reinforce that magic of that happens in the brain. It's crazy that we can reinforce the negative side of this amazing thing that we can do with our brain of thinking and then feeling it. just from visualizing or imagining the worst situation, a worse situation. Geez, that could have been so much worse, that pain in the middle. They could have hit me, in that circumstance where they cut you off. They could have hit me, they could have damaged the car, they could have hurt me, my kids in the car. Did they? No. React to the situation you've got. So let's go over those quickly again. Stop, take a breath, make that a habit. Create that awareness. Then exercise if you need to. If you've got the chance to, exercise. That'll cut it out. If you feel like those emotions are just too much, go run. Go smash yourself, exercise-wise. Go jump from the gym and just pump some weights out. You'll burn it all off. It melts it away. It's amazing what exercise does. All right, then we're going to create awareness again. We're going to stop. We're going to really ask ourselves one question. What is happening right now? And then we're going to get some perspective. How is this affecting me? Is this worth changing the way I am for the rest of my life? Is it really that big of a deal? Losing a relative. Yes, that is a pretty big deal. But how much of my life am I willing to let change? Because I feel like rubbish and I want to feel that way for however. Or can we change it to, you know what? We lost them. Yes, we probably shouldn't have lost them this early. What if it's tragic? Remember the good things. They were here for a certain amount of time. Remember those things. Cherish those things. Life is what it is. It's very delicate. It could be gone the next day. So it's very important that we understand that. Why would I be starting to allow that situation to then dictate how I feel for the rest of my life? Like, oh, that person didn't have it easy. They were gone too early. So now I'm going to act like my life's already ended. Like I'm just going to sit, sulk, think the world's against me. So it's very important that we go, what is happening to me right now? Take that information, process it, react and process, and then move on. Learn what you need to learn from it, because there's so much things we can learn from the past and what's occurred, and then bring it into the now and then how we can use it. And always remember that we've only got now. The past happened, it's over. We can move on. The future's still being written. And what we do now is what matters. So I hope you really enjoyed this podcast. I know it's a little bit late, but really look forward to getting the next one out too as quick as I possibly can, so you guys can have the next week's episode as well. If you like this stuff, guys, make sure you're sharing it. Make sure you share it with your friends and family. And until next time, stay limitless.